do
Go here.
this.
Okay. So justice for all. And then,
So I'm gonna introduce Sue. So, hi everybody. Sorry for all our chit chat. It's always interesting when we log into WebEx. It's always something different. So sorry for all the chit chat. Okay, so when we sent the flyer out, it said that a master gardener would be giving this talk, and that was Jill Jordan. She had a family emergency, and Sue graciously stepped up. Sue is our senior horticulturist here in Ocean County at Rutgers Cooperative Extension. Um, it's her birthday, and I appreciate you doing this so much.
happy birthday.
She threw this together and she worked over the weekend and got it done. And she's going to tell you, Howard said happy birthday. She is going to tell you all about why native plants matter in our landscapes. So Sue, oh, by the way, I'm Patty. And I try to put these programs together. I work over at RCE also. And Ellen Silverman and Phyllis D, they are on. They're going to help answer any questions that you have. Put them in chat, and we will do our best to bang out the answers to the questions. And if we miss anybody, you can always contact us at the office. We're happy to help you. Okay, Sue, take it away.
Okay. All right. So good evening, everybody. As Patty said, I'm Susan M. Hartzer-Video. Ellen Silverman and Phyllis D'Alessandro are our master gardeners, volunteers. So they're helping us out. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So we're talking about, what are native plants? Trying to have a little bit of a conversation about, what are they and why is it so important, or why is that the buzzword these days? So I'm going to start with talking a little bit about ecoregions, because this is important. The ecoregions, you can read it there, says the areas where ecosystems are generally similar. So they have similar types of soil, the environmental resources are similarly available. The EPA and the government, they identify these by analyzing the patterns and composition of geology, landforms, et cetera, et cetera. So the next slide I actually have. So this slide actually shows what our ecoregions are here in New Jersey. And I do realize that maybe some of you are not from Jersey that might be on our PowerPoint tonight, our presentation. So they have this for everybody in every state. But for us, our ecoregions, you can see the map on the left shows how many ecoregions we have here in New Jersey, which when you see that next to the one on the right, that is our geological map. And what is our base of our soils? What are we living on, or what's the bedrock made of? And you can see that they mimic each other. So the tan in the right hand, Ocean, Burlington, Atlantic, and Cumberland, we are all the coastal towns. We're built mostly on sand. And if we, those of you that have gardened in a lot of these, we all know that. And when you look to the ecoregions, it's the light lavender. So, and that whole area that is actually the dark purple and into the lavender is actually pinelands. So the actual pine barrens is that whole area. It's crazy. You don't realize how big it is. Sometimes I think it's just in Ocean County. And sand and clay, I see Jackie writing that up there in chat. So again, knowing what things can grow in those areas will help if you know what can survive in the same types of soil and the same environment. So, this is what we're going to try to break it into a little bit more for you. But plants that grow in sandy coastal soils may not do so well in the northern Jersey because you have more clay and rock in there. So again, that's why ecoregions are important. So we want to define what is a native. A species that occurs naturally in specified geographic areas. Again, the reason why we had ecoregions in there. They're plants living on this continent before the European settlers arrived, because when we had immigration, plants came along with them and they migrated and some for the better, not some, not so much. But when we talk about native, right now in this presentation, we're going to be talking about natives as a whole. So it could be natives in the United States, natives in New Jersey, or natives in Ocean County, if you want to get that specific. And at the end, there are some resources if you want to know for your particular county, if you want to be that specific. But we'll talk about why that plays a part. And I'm not all native. I do like having a few bits and pieces in my garden that aren't. I do daylilies, but I, keep the running ones out. So there are some things we'll talk about invasive as well. So again, then why is it important to have native plants? So it's all about relationships. The plants and the wildlife, insects, they've all over millions of years have evolved together. Some insects evolved in their specialty in the native plants, specialties like the monarch butterflies. They specialize specifically eating Asclepias. In my garden, it tends to be the Asclepias, the common milkweed, Asclepias. It just went right out of my head. Not incarnata, the other one. I'll get to that. Sorry. I just went right out of my head. So if that ecoregion can't support that, this is why we want to try to know what can grow in our areas. And also providing the insects will provide food for the birds and other insect web, which we will talk about. We'll talk about that as well. And so go to the next one. So without insects, our entire food web would collapse. You may not know, I mean, I'm showing some spiders here, but for some birds, spiders make up to 30% of their diet. So having a healthy ecosystem, having a diversity of insects and wildlife. Thank you, Syriaca. Thank you on the common milkweed. Spiders are all predators. And they rely on many insects for prey, so they eat the smaller insects. So again, we'll get into this food web. One more slide here. Most plants depend on insects for pollination, which is why it is important to keep a good insect population around. And then the birds. So this has a little bit of strong point on birds, but birds depend on insects to feed their young with the protein. They need a lot of protein. So here's the picture again, the simple food web. And I loved this comment. The wildlife comes as a traveling troupe. You can't pick and choose who is in the cast. You have to feed everyone, so to speak. So flowering plants attract myriad of insects, which attract predators of those insects, and so on as a food web. Also in the soil, the similar action is happening. So having these relationships and the different insects and the, you got to have this in order to have that, in order to have that, and feed those. And so that whole cycle. And yes, that's a whole different subject that we won't get too far into. I'm just kind of touching base a little bit. But here in the soil food web, your organic matter, your plants, they break down. Bacteria helps break it down, fungi, some of those things then are insects will start eating those. And then they arthropods are insects, they're segmented, jointed bodied with legs. That is why, or no, excuse me, segmented bodies and jointed legs, which are arthropods, which are insects. And if we we want our insects, we need them. They are highly important to the to our web here. So now I'm coming into, what is your relationship with bugs? Why is, are you scared of them or are you fascinated by them? And you don't necessarily have to get one-on-one and be right in with them. You can, just knowing that the relationships are there and why it's important to have food and support this ecosystem. So the bugs are the critical link. You can see it says the little things that run the world. So when you're thinking about it, can every bug eat every plant? Why or why not? So when you're in, as they've evolved, some plants, some insects have become very specific. They need to have the certain food, whether it's something to eat, to chew, or suck on the plant. And then for the birds, they survive on these seeds. Seeds dispersion is all about some insects will do that, but also pollination and also the spreading of the plants. So they can become specialized, or they can be a little more broad. As we know, we've seen the invasive insect, the spotted lanternfly. Many of us have had some dealings with those, and they prefer a certain plant, but they can certainly be happy on other things when they are in numbers. So, okay, so do you let your bugs eat your plants? Won't that hurt my plant? We get that a lot. You have to have a tolerance. What is your tolerance? What are you willing to have in order to have not a landscape per se, a balance in the ecosystem to try, we've come here, and I'm not trying to do my beliefs, but we've modified the landscape as it is. We've have houses, we have gardens, we have roads, we've changed things from its natural habitat. So how do we try to bring that semblance sort of back into where we can live and live together, rather than creating these deserts with no insects and no life, or very poor life. So this is a picture of the dogwood sawfly. So a few larvae is great, or not great, but the larvae, the birds will eat them. But so what? They eat a couple of leaves. Who cares? If you have 1,500 of them on a small tree, yes, that's going to be a problem. So kind of knowing what's the threshold, what can you tolerate, what can the plant tolerate, and then learning a little bit more about those insects to see how we can maybe modify them in a certain way if you need to. But if, sorry, also knowing their relationship, sorry, in their, how they propagate, how they survive. Single generation of insects versus multiple generations of insects. So this is a picture of the Japanese beetle, where they start as grubs. They come up to the top, they come out as a beetle. As a beetle, they chew and eat, and then they go back, lay their eggs, and then the grubs feed on the roots of the grass. That is a single generation. In 1 year, this would happen. So trying to target, knowing a single generation, you can try to target a certain area in their life, not area, a certain time in their life to lessen the impact that you have on the environment with negative, if you can capture them by hand, instead of using chemicals, things like that. So knowing if an insect has a bad insect, if it's a bad insect, what's their, if they have multiple generations like aphids, yeah, you may have to do some intervening so that they just don't overwhelm the plant. So okay, again, I'm kind of talking a little bit on broad things here, so we will get into more questions as we get through here. But so why is it important to know, or why is it important to either the prey and predator relationship? If your prey is high, your predators are going to be lower, because again, you're keeping them in balance. The same with the predator. If you've got a lot of predators around, then your prey is going to go down. So having a relationship that has that ebb and flow, that's what we want, and that shows us a good diversity as well as an ecosystem that works, that it stays in. You don't have to use the chemicals, trying to, again, lessen that. So kind of going into why native plants matter. They support the local wildlife. It promotes the biodiversity, improve soil health, and improve water quality. So again, if those populations balance out, you'll have a balanced natural environment. So think about your landscape. How many different plants might you have in your landscape? Do you have mostly lawn? Do you have lots of hedges? Do you have gardens and less lawn? So knowing what kind of environment you're providing for these insects and birds and this whole, circle of life, is important. Monocultures, we don't want monocultures. Monocultures would be growing one type of plant over a larger area. The more lawn we have, it supports the Japanese beetles, and the beetle grubs will support the birds, but you're only supporting a small group of the circle. You're not actually giving as much into the whole circle of life. So for me, I have lawn. I still want to see some green, but I have more gardens, and I pick and choose for me what works at my house. Now, other people, you might have a house, you might have a patio, so you may have to figure out a little bit more what works for you. And native plants can be grown in pots. But I just wanted to kind of, give you that overall. If we can support the local wildlife, promote the biodiversity by having different things, if there's a crisis or something that's going to wipe out one plant, the other plants will kind of help to balance that out. It won't wipe out the whole ecosystem like it did with the Dust Bowl way back in the 1920s. They planted crops after crops. It was poor crop health for farmers that, you go into this area and now it's depleted of nutrients. Nothing wants to grow there. And now you've got this big dust, the winds come and Dust Bowl. With native plants, they improve the soil health because they do hold deep soils. They hold the soils together, keeps the soils from washing off and going into the waterways. It improves water quality by having native plants. They will keep the soils, keep the soils where they're supposed to be, but also help to filter out some pollutants because it stops them before they get to our waterways. Okay, so talking a little bit about, kind of going into, Jackie, we'll get to you when we get to the Q&A, I'll get to you about your question about the homeowners. So plant selections, like what would you want to look for when you are trying to choose native plants that fit for your area or fit for your application? You want to look for plants that what the hardiness zone would be, sunlight, soil type, pH, and moisture. This is general. You all should know a lot of this. Many of you are gardeners that I know that are on the program, but just trying to give you that idea. These are considerations when choosing native plants that might work for you. So I wanted to show you, this is the map. Many of you have seen this one already, but this is our map of New Jersey at the hardiness zones. And you can sort of, if you remember back to the first map, I should have brought it up here. You can see that 6B, which is that little bit darker green, or 7A, is that lighter green. In the middle, Toms River, from Millville to Toms River up into Trenton, that is the Pine Barrens. That follows that coastal ecoregion. And then as you get higher up in 6B, the cooler temperatures up in Sussex County and Hackettstown up there. So you can see that the hardiness zones follow along with the geology, but also with our ecoregions. And so having something that grows in similar places will make the garden much more resilient. All right, so I'm going to just quick native, you can't talk about native species and not talk about invasives. I don't want to get, again, just touching base on this. There are insects, animals, fungi, algae, plants that are native and invasive. But then again, not all invasive, not all introduced plants are bad. You do have plants that actually do very well, and they're not invasive. In other words, they stay in their space. There is some insect activity, supports some different pollinators, but it doesn't necessarily provide all the food for our local pollinators that we usually have here. But then again, not all natives are better. So when we talk about it, I usually say, for me, it depends on your landscape, what's going to work for you. If you have your if you have your perennials, goldenrod grows everywhere. It seems to just have a great way. It's got deep roots. Really here on the coast, we see a lot of that here. As you get into the fields, you'll see it but there are some variances as we go. While it reseeds itself, it isn't necessarily invasive. Some things can be a little aggressive. In other words, they might be going into your garden a little bigger than you wanted. So like common milkweed. While I love it in my garden, it can be a bit of a thug. It will stretch and go into the garden. It's aggressive in the garden as a native plant. But again, not all natives are better either. Poison ivy. Poison ivy is a native plant. I don't know how many of us really want poison ivy in our yards. Maybe that's fine out there but it does provide a food source for birds. And it's a the berries actually of poison ivy is importance for the food web. Not that I want it in my garden, but just to kind of give you that a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about the invasive. What is invasive plants? What are invasive plants? Invasive species, the government organisms that are not native to a particular ecosystem but can reproduce quickly and outcompete the native species once established, and that's important. So as we see, I know we have some issues with Asian jumping worms. This Asian jumping worms are not native here. Regular earthworms are not native here either, but the Asian jumping worms creates this compacts the soil more in forest situations. It depletes the soil of some nutrients. It doesn't go back. Their worm castings are not able to be used like we use earthworms and the night crawlers and things like that that will help to nourish our soil. The Asian jumping worm doesn't. So trying to keep them out of our gardens if possible, although they've kind of spread and we're finding more and more that they are here. We're trying to see if for our home gardens, how much that's actually going to pose a problem, if at all, for us. If it's just really more in the wider landscapes in the forest, it's changing some of our soil contents. Knowing what the plant name is and knowing if what the botanical name is, if it's a common name. Some common names could be different in another area. So again, this is kind of, I know, general knowledge, but knowing genus and species so that you can know that you're getting a native and not not an invasive, excuse me, an introduced plant or one that it's not native here. But I wanted to show you this example. So the example on the left, to me, that I saw that and I'm like, oh, it's a red twig dogwood. Well, the common name is a blood twig dogwood that is native in Europe, and it's Cornus swinginia, excuse me, midwinter fire. We grow it here. It's an introduced. It's beautiful in the landscapes in the wintertime. It's not invasive because it has not gone out of cultivation. In other words, it kind of stays where it is right now. They have not seen any where the seeds just pop up here, there, and everywhere. But then if you look on the right, the native to America, the common red twig dogwood, Cornus syrica, I did it again, Patty. That is our native one. And with our native, knowing you have that, that supports our local wildlife, whereas the blood twig dogwood from Europe may not support as much wildlife because it hasn't grown here and grown up with our species. All right, I kind of threw this one in, or this one I left in because deer. We all know here deer in Ocean County are ridiculous. And of course, we have to be careful on our ways out and about. That just because something says it's deer resistant doesn't mean it's deer proof. Again, there's regional differences. What's not on the menu? Look in your neighborhood. If you have a big deer problem, if it's a herd that walks along your property every day, they're going to be eating them almost no matter what. If you are, 5 houses down and something changes with your neighbor where they were walking all the time, they may come and nibble around at your house. But when you're on those major pathways, a lot of it depends on where the deer are living, and the young will taste everything. So in the spring, everything's kind of fair game till they figure out what they like. As young plants, showing this picture here is actually showing a younger, looks like a birch, showing that it is wrapped enough to keep the deer from eating it till it gets taller, and then eventually you can remove that cage and have a traditional tree. You may still need to protect the bark from buck rub when the bucks are trying to get the velvet off their antlers. Okay, so all right, so coming into, I mentioned before about supporting wildlife, and what's an example of this? Black cap raspberry. It's a host for 148 species of Lepidoptera, which are butterflies. and moths. They attract 149 species of birds, but it also is a food source for rabbits, chipmunks. I mean, you can read deer, raccoon, skunk, bear, fox, and humans. So having, it's not just that it's for the insects. It's for the insects that feed the birds that then feed larger mammals, and then also the berries that can then nourish our smaller mammals in there, and as well as nourish ourselves, so we get a little bit of energy from our fruits and healthy stuff. But I also wanted to show you that chickadee math. I saw this slide and I thought, I never really thought about how many birds or how many caterpillars it takes to, to feed a bird. So to fledge one brood, which is depending on the number of chicks. So a bird, usually they can have, I guess depending on the bird, they can have 2 eggs, they can have up to 5, I believe. And it's 350 to 570 caterpillars per day, depending on the number of chicks. 15 days to 18 days, so almost 3 weeks to fledge. That's a lot of caterpillars that they need to eat. So when you're looking at birds or the wildlife that you may want to bring or support around you, around your home, you may want to, there's some plants that are kind of like the top ones, especially for the birds, because that was the easiest one to find information about who's supported. So I'm going to go through top natives for caterpillars, if you would like to support caterpillar life in order to support the birds, and again, the circle of life. You have the oaks, cherries, and plums in the plum family, birch, willow, and poplars. Here in New Jersey, our oak population is doing rather well, and the prunus, we do have other things that aren't eating our plums, but that can come into play with a little bit of fungus and some things. So the environment is changing, that we need to see how our plants will react. But having these insects, being able to tolerate some chewing on the plant, it has a hole, it's not going to kill the plant. But having birds and seeing the wildlife come and just nesting in these trees and eating the caterpillars that are there. So again, having the plants to support that biodiversity is important. This is just an example of another plant at black oak. It hosts, again, species of moths, butterflies with additional insects, squirrels, mice, voles, and other insects, deer, turkey, and a dozen other birds eat acorns. It's, it supports not just birds, it supports a lot of other wildlife in order for that to help us. And the acorns are planted by the squirrels, as we know. They'll be popping around, digging up your plants, trying to get the acorns in the ground. You do find them popping up everywhere right now, especially with the rain that we just had. Sorry, I'm going off topic there, but your black cherries, this is an important one. Prunus serotina. It's a wild black cherry. I have a couple in my yard. They're not the traditional flowering Japanese cherries that you see on the people's front lawns and things like that. Some people can consider them messy trees, but they support so much wildlife that how do you not have something like that in your yard? Maybe it's not your front lawn tree. Maybe you have a back area that you can choose to put something in to help with our native wildlife. So again, the cherry fruits are eaten by 84 species of mammals, birds, small mammals, moth host. I see Phyllis put in there a big moth host for our big Cecropia moths that we have, one of the largest here in New Jersey. Foxes, beavers, raccoons. I mean, everybody likes to have a little black cherry every once in a while. And then the flowers are pretty in the spring. So if you do want a flowering tree, it is nice. So there are some things, we talk about cherries. A lot of the Japanese cherries are not as suited. Right now, they're doing really well in the landscape for a lot of people, but in other cases, they are the biggest problem that we have that come into us. So trying to stay with the native cherries, while they may not be as floriferous as the Japanese, this is going to provide much more food and wildlife support than the Japanese cherries do. So shrubs, just to kind of give you a little idea on shrubs, here blueberries support 277 species for caterpillars in order for, again, the birds come around. So we know that the birds are coming to eat the blueberries, but there are caterpillars that they're coming as well. Now holly is down there on the list. It's only supports only 45 species of caterpillars. However, the fruits support birds. They support all other kind of wildlife as well. So it's important to have a diversity. If you had all blueberries, you're supporting one smaller group of that web, but having a little bit here, a little bit there of different things. How does it work? How do you put it together? Well, that's where it comes into a little bit of play. I did want to just talk, the herbaceous. So the number one herbaceous, one of the number one herbaceous species is goldenrod. Solidago. Right now, they've been blooming. Some have started at the end of August. Some have been blooming full in September. We have a lot blooming now. So the seaside goldenrod's in full bloom right now. Well, maybe not with all the rain we just had, but the goldenrod is a beautiful, the amount of insects that you see, pollinators, as well as just the if you want to see something alive and moving, that's one of those plants. That's a great one for that. There's another one that I'll show you on here too. Here's some native shrubs. These are some more plants that you could possibly use to bring in some wildlife on in a smaller. A couple of these are a little big, but on others, this could be in your smaller area. Your Virginia sweetspire, Itea virginica, may be something that you could plant around your 3-foot area in an HOA setting. Clethra alternifolia, summer sweet, that can get rather large. It's prunable, but it wants to make a colony. So you don't want to put it in that small space for too long, or you're going to have to do a little more maintenance to keep it in its place. 9-barks get really big. Elderberry gets really big. So they're not something I would necessarily put in a small space. So again, doing your homework, doing your research, trying to figure out, what works for you and what can work in your area. One last, one more example. Herbaceous plants. So I pulled this from somebody else's PowerPoint, but plants that are particularly attractive to target species. So target species. Do you want to attract more birds? Do you want to see more butterflies? You don't have to. You can just let nature be and attract whatever you can. But these would be some herbaceous plants that would attract hummingbirds and moths and butterflies. So having these tubular flowers for the hummingbirds, these would be some things that would work for that. And they're deer resistant. Doesn't mean that the deer won't eat them. It just means they tend to leave them alone unless you are right along the stream and the animals are walking right, you still may have to give some kind of a barrier to keep them from chewing them down to the ground. Okay. Anicisip, just to kind of also give you agastache or agastache, nectar sources for bees, butterflies, hummingbird. Songbirds eat the seeds. Strong stems provide habitat use. So it has a lot of uses that's not just for insect activity in the sense of eating the plants. So they're not necessarily eating the leaves, but they're sources for nectar and pollen. And hoary mountain mint. Okay, so we talked a little bit about, or I talked very little about invasive species or aggressive species. Now, mountain mint is one of my all-time favorite perennials to have in a garden for insect activity. The pollinators just love this. Now there's this is a Picanthamum incanatum. I'm always bad with my Latin. Hoary mountain mint. I have this plant, and this one tends to stay more contained. It still gets about 3 foot tall, maybe 4 in the garden, but it has this nice silvery tip, so it looks like frost is on the leaves. But the insects are incredible with this, but it doesn't seem to spread for me as it would if you do the pycnanthemum. I know Phyllis will correct me. Nudicum, I believe it is a mudicum with an M, and that is that it's a mint. It's in the mint family. When we see a lot of things that are in the mint family, they have those underground runners. So in a small garden, it may not be the plant for you. So knowing what plant and knowing the habitat of that plant or how it's supposed to grow is important. So definitely do your research. But again, the mountain mint is an awesome plant, and it's adaptable. It's very adaptable to different soil types. All right, so I have one more example here, and then kind of, whoops, didn't want to wrap up that far yet. Goldenrod, just the native pollinators, the butterflies, seeds for feeding songbirds, used by 40 species of insects as food source and a host plant. There's so many different varieties. I can't say enough about this plant. It's one of my favorites. But I know that there are some hybrids out there. Um, I am not an expert as to what native hybrids or varieties that have been bred are better than others. I know there's a lot of people that are native plants. That's all they want to grow. They're very particular about the native plants. That they're particular about growing only native plants that are native in Ocean County or to their county, or only to New Jersey, or is it a native plant that's native in the United States? So I'm going to go into some resources there to help you find out what you want. If you want to grow some native plants, how native is it? Do you want to get really smaller and much more minute and support our particular wildlife here? But it's good to have a difference in, like, so even if you do find something that might grow in Sussex County and you're able to get it to grow here, down here in Ocean County, we have a lot of insects, a lot of birds that migrate. So having some food on their pathway as they make their way north or south, depending on which way they're heading at the time, um, is again, supporting that food web. So it doesn't have to be only just right here, but it depends on how of a purist you are when it comes to native plants. All right, so we talked a little, in the flyer was mentioned a little bit about where to buy plants. Now, Rutgers, these are not the only businesses that sell natives that I have listed on here. And Rutgers does not endorse these businesses, but we're trying to give you an idea. There are some websites we'll go into that show more of people that are outside of Ocean County, that maybe you would like to try to find some plants. So Home Depot sells native plants, but or excuse me, the big box stores sell native plants, but they don't sell a lot of them. It's a very small amount. So if you're looking to do a native plant garden, you're better off going to finding somebody that's more specializes more in the native plants or carries a lot more selection so that you can make that diversity in your garden or in your area. So you can see the names of the group here. We will share, I know somebody put in there if we can share the PowerPoint. I may do that, but if not, we will definitely share where to buy. You could take a screenshot of this. You can buy mail order as well. So again, these are not the only places, so you may want to do some research where you will live to see who does really well. We can also pop a couple in the chat there if anybody has some that they like. We could do that. And then so on Jersey Friendly Yards website, there is a resource there that talks about where to buy native plants, and they're by county. So if you, so there's some native plant sources in there. And the bottom, Native Plant Society has a great plant list as well. Also really helps, both of these will help you find native plants that fit your ecoregion or would be better suited. So there's some great resources there. And then if you're not sure what they look like or what to expect of a native garden, and I'll talk about one last thing before, after I get to here, where to view. So in Ocean County, we have a few samples here. Jake's Branch County Park, Caddis Island's a big native. They have a big native plant garden, Island Beach State Park, just to see in the natural beauty there. We do have a small section in our native plants, uh, our garden there, and also we're working on our master gardeners are working on a native plant teaching garden in Ocean County Park in Lakewood, and we will let people know when that is officially open for viewing and checking that out. So again, there's a lot of places locally for those people that are here that are in Ocean County, but I know there's a lot of you. Monmouth County's got deep cut gardens. There's quite a few different places that you can look around in your area to help you kind of see, what do these things look like growing? Is it going to work? Now, I did see in the question, there was the one person that had put about the homeowners association. Unfortunately, when you are in I shouldn't say unfortunately, when you're in a certain developments where your HOAs kind of let you know you can only go 3 foot out, you have limitations. You got to kind of stay in those limitations. Unfortunately, that's what, sometimes. Okay, so if you cannot put native plants maybe in your area, maybe there's a common area that a group of you, maybe there's gardeners in your HOA that can then put an area, make an area that's for pollinators, and you guys can take care of that. Or if you have a community garden area, that maybe you can create a little pollinator haven in that area near a forest edge or something like that. So there are ways to do native plants, and they don't have to be in a garden. Yes, Geraldine, thank you. Monmouth County Master Gardeners have a lot. In Monmouth County too, there's a lot of native plant gardening. So I just want to kind of go over this, and then I'll leave some time for questions. So websites, these are some where you can find native plant information. So if you want to know what's working in your eco region or what is native to your region, these are some of the websites that will help you with that, especially the USDA plant database. Jersey Friendly Yards interactive website. Again, they have the ecoregions listed, and you can put coastal and find the plants that are native in the coastal area or that work really well in sandy soils. And there is a lot more you can put in the soil types. You can put in, you're looking for a tree or shrub. So Native Wildlife Federation is a great for native plant finder, but they also give you a lot of information, give you some information about what bees and butterfly, or what how many insects can visit these. So if that is where you want to bring in more insects versus birds, or bring in the insects, you bring in the birds. But iNaturalist is great for identifying flora and fauna from pictures on your phone. So that's a good website. I say website. You have to have an idea what this plant, you got to take it with a little grain of salt. If you take a good picture, you might get a better result. If you take a bad picture, you're going to get that it's a tomato plant and it's this hoary mountain mint. So you really want to make sure that when you take pictures or use the iNaturalist or any of those apps, that you are, kind of definitely have your location on, so it knows what's supposed to be in your area, to try to take out the things that would not normally be found there. And something from Africa saying that it's this plant. Some other websites for you for native plant wildlife. Again, you could do screenshots of these. Audubon Society, great for birds. Bee City USA, great for, and Xerces Society, great resource for pollinators. Butterflies and Moth of North America .org. There's New Jersey has its own butterfly moth society. So if you guys are really want to know more about certain insects or what plants attract certain ones, that's a great place. And then we do have the Ladybird Johnson's Native Plant Database. It does give you a lot of information, searchable information, that you can drill you down to certain smaller areas or whatnot. And I do believe it services the whole United States. From Rutgers, these are some of our fact sheets that are important, incorporating native plants. Blooms for bees, we do have them at our agriculture center, or if you're in your counties, you can also find it there, and your extension in New Jersey, but also Pennsylvania has Penn State Extension, so you can find others that fit more in your area if you're from out of state. The Rain Garden Manual of New Jersey is a great source to find what plants are native, to help with stormwater management. trying to find things that would help capture some of that rainwater instead of having it run off into the waterways. And I know at Monmouth County on Kozlowski Road at the Extension Center there, they have a rain garden that you can see. I believe there's also a rain garden that is shown at Ocean County College as well. I believe there's a rain garden there that you can visit if you're on campus. And I just want to say thank you. I don't know if Lisa's on, but I want to thank my Master Gardener Coordinator in Sussex County who was graciously allowed me to borrow her program and kind of make it a little bit more fitting for us. So I wanted to thank her for all her native plant information for us. And this is our information there. Now I'm going to just leave this slide up here. We don't have any of our normal our normal surveys and things because I can't seem to load those up today. So we will send out the survey about the program through email if that would be all right, and you can fill it out if you would and let us know what you thought. And then Patty, thank you. Phyllis is saying Rose Campion is not a native plant. Really cool plant, and it does reseed, but for me, I don't have too much trouble with it. But I know I like seeing that gray fuzzy foliage. But we also, compared to purple loosestrife, which is wild in the garden, it is, or not wild in the garden, but when there's wet areas, it can run rampant and has been, I can't say outlawed. We don't really have outlaw yet. They're working on having invasive species not being sold in New Jersey. That's an ongoing thing. All right, I don't know. I'm sure there's probably other questions I did not see. I don't know. I know Patty's frozen on my
I
screen, but
honestly, Sue, I think you found most of the questions because they were popping up and you could see them. I think you got them all. I really do.
okay. Well, if
So
there's
if you
any,
have
yeah,
questions, put them in the chat. We're happy to answer. Sue, thank you. Great job.
thank you, thank you. Yeah, it was a little. I mean, I know lots of different things. Oh, thank you, Jean. It's just trying to put them all together in a manner that's understandable or relatable. Again, we're just trying to touch a little bit on different native plants, but also why. It's important. If you have your native plants, you have less input. The plants are more suited to our dry soils for those of us here on the Jersey coast. So therefore, you have less water use. You have more less maintenance generally when you do native plants because they don't need to be babied. They want to grow in this area. They like it hot and dry for some things. And then you don't have to do as much fertilizer and pesticides because these plants grow with the insects or they've, come around. Now, insects, sometimes you might still have to do some mitigation or some interaction with trying to stop things. But if you do pollinators, if you have milkweed, whether it's the common, the swamp, or the butterfly weed, you can't spray it. It's got caterpillars. I mean, that's the whole point. So if you have a lot of aphids, you might need to do something that's going to be more manageable, where you're squishing the aphids and leaving the food for the caterpillars, the leaves and things like that. If you start spraying, it can be an issue. I saw the question about hydrangeas. Hydrangeas are not native. There's two. Phyllis and Ellen will put them in the chat, I'm sure. There are hydrangea arborescens and the quercifolia, the oak leaf hydrangea, are two types that are native here in. Thank you, Ellen. Put in the Silverman put in about the native plant seed propagation. Trying to think, there's also a fact sheet on changing invasives, changing out if you have an invasive plant, changing it out for native, what would be a good native alternative? And that Rutgers, that's a newer fact sheet that just came out this last 2 years. So there's a lot of great information out there. Check for EDUs, educational outlets versus just what's up on on Google or some of the different don't try the home remedies. You can cause more issues than it's really worth. You're better off trying to. Okay, Somebody put in, I missed that question, something about alyssum and hoverflies. I don't know.
Somebody wrote that plant alyssum near plants that get aphids. The hoverflies will eat the aphids.
That's a great, yes. And if you plant it, they will come. Isn't that, I have, not that the aphids will come. I mean, yes, they will, but aphids, there's so many different types of aphids, but they're a soft-bodied insect, so they can actually, in small numbers, they can be controlled pretty easily. On crepe myrtles, which are not native, I love crepe myrtles, but they're not native. They are just running rampant this
Yeah.
year, and on my milkweed, they were rampant on my milkweed.
But
I didn't care.
don't hesitate to swipe your finger up the stem of your milkweed just to kind of knock off, and it just lends into the threshold that you can tolerate on your plant and what the plant can actually tolerate before it, you know.
Before it looks ugly.
Yeah.
Or I have to say though, I did not use any of my, oh, that's a good one, Steve. That's a good question. I'll get to. I did not use any insecticide on my common milkweed, and it did look nasty, a lot of aphids, but I was enjoying watching. I had hoverflies on the plant. I had ladybug larvae and adults. It was just amazing to see this relationship with other insects that are predators that help keep some of them in check. The thing with the aphids, they have multiple generations in a month, let alone a year. And that's why they are difficult to control once they get out of hand when the conditions are right. Steve had asked the question, Patty, if you wouldn't mind repeating that one.
Yep.
Something about
Should you
ironweed.
or can you trim New York ironweed and New England asters to prevent them from falling over?
Yes, actually, that's perfect. The uh, ironweed and the asters, usually the, the the rule is kind of like do it before 4th of July. So when they get about half knee, mid calf, give it a haircut, cut it about halfway down. I've done my ironweed around the 4th of July. I've done it like the week after, and it bloomed a little later than I wanted it to, so I tried not to do it too much later than that. But it did bring a smaller plant, so instead of 6 foot, I think I had a 4 foot plant in my ironwood, in my ironweed, excuse me. And the asters, though, you can get some nice shapes by keeping them what they call pinching them or um, pruning them down. So yes, you can do that to keep them. Otherwise, staking, good sunlight, and no wind, which everybody's garden's going to look like something
Yeah.
after this weekend.
My favorite things right now to trim before 4th of July are the cup plant. So it no longer gets to 8 feet in my yard. I can keep it at a nice 4 foot. And also, I've been pruning my grasses to keep them a little more compact, and they still flower.
Yes, especially because these plants flower in September, October, so they have
Yep,
more time, long enough time to still produce flower buds. Obviously, something that's growing in the spring or is going to flower in June, if you cut it back, it may not have enough time to flower. You cut the flower buds off. So,
right.
yes, Phyllis put in ladybugs like aphids. I don't know, Phyllis, is there anything else in your garden that you trim back a little? I
Well,
like the
since
brush.
I'm not very good at trimming things back, all my
This is
plants are
true,
like 8 feet tall.
but it's beautiful. I mean, with the flowers and the amount of insects, it was it's if you she's on she's featured her yard's featured on Jersey Friendly Yard. So if anybody wants to see Phyllis's yard, it's pretty cool.
I do want
The
to I do want to note too. I did try, I think 2 years in a row, to trim back some of my goldenrod before 4th of July, and it was very unhappy that I did it. It did not flower the way it should. So I don't know if that's just the type I had, or, I'm not sure, but it wasn't happy. Ellen's saying that she does goldenrod. So, I don't know. It's trial and error. You can try. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, for me, my goldenrod doesn't fall over as much. I know there are some that get really tall and leggy.
Yeah.
If it could also be doing that if it's a little on the shady side, not too shady that they can't grow, but it might be a little shady and they stretch a little more and then they get top heavy, especially when the flowers are on, they get top heavy. There was a question in the chat I thought about brackish water.
It says, apart from fresh water, is there anything to mitigate brackish water flooding from the bay this week?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, once the water recedes enough, just try, if your water is still on, just try to flush out
Flush.
yeah, flush. That's is let your, I hate to say put a sprinkler on or something like that, but try to let the water and let that leach, any salts and stuff leach out of the soil. And it shouldn't take too long, maybe 15, 20 minutes, maybe twice in a week, just enough to kind of help flush the salts down and back into the waterway. Be careful. Big thing right now in New Jersey, coming up November 1st is going to be our, or is it November 15th? Sorry, Patty, it's November 15th for our fertilizer. No no lawn fertilizing after November 15th for homeowners because the grass will be going dormant and it can't use it. So if you put that fertilizer down too late, as soon as we get a storm like this, well, this was a little more than needed, but if we have heavy rains, it's just washing right down into our waterways. So, again, pay attention to when you're doing any fertilizers. Most of the time your lawns, well, even your plants don't really need a lot of fall fertilizer. If you want, save it at this point, save it for the spring. If you want to give them a little boost to get them going in the spring. And yeah, pop in any other questions. I don't know if if I'm hoping I made sense. I know it was a lot of little bits of information just to kind of reiterate what native plants are and just, try, experiment. Um, the deer trimmed the Joe Pye weed in June, and it did come back. Yes, so sometimes the deer are our native pruners. So that actually works pretty well. Not that, but you didn't miss the flowers. It just flowered a little later. So, there's a lot of different things, but you can always check with your local extension if you're not from Ocean County. Even if you're out of Ocean County, you can always email us at the website that is on here. Thank you, Irene. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot about native plants, but when you're trying to put it together for a PowerPoint, it can get a little nutty. Just trying to stay focused and yeah. So I want to thank Patty. Thank you for hosting these. We've been doing a lot more in person. Um, we want more
We have
hands-on
been
stuff.
doing
Yep.
a lot more in person. However, next the flyers should be coming out hopefully by the end of this week. So our talk in November will be about drought resistant plants, and that will also be online. Um, so yeah, stay tuned for that. So you should all get the flyer for that. If not, contact us and we'll let you know all about it.
Yeah.
Sue, I can't thank you enough for stepping up and doing this for us. Such short notice, we really very much appreciate it, especially on your birthday.
Well, I don't mind talking, as most of you know, but I just hope I made enough sense and made it a cohesive PowerPoint
It
or
was
just a
great.
presentation. So I appreciate
Um,
everybody.
and thank you to Phyllis and thank you to Ellen, our native plant specialist, for sure. Thank you very much for being on tonight.
Yep. Thank you, ladies, and we'll see you guys in the next program. And I will see you, but I hopefully will not be presenting the next time around. Thank you, everybody. Have a great one.
Thank you.
All right, Patty, did you hit the record?
I'm going to hit record. Stop recording.
Yeah, I'm trying to hit stop sharing too, but it's not going off. There we go. Okay. All right. So hopefully, I was going to say I should have had you hit stop record and start record again. You're frozen on my screen. I don't know if I was hoping I was making sense because I couldn't see me. So,
Yeah, you're making sense.
okay. All right.
Save to the cloud.
Yes. Thank you. uh,